Hi, I'm Alan Finney, and this is what ayahuasca told me to tell you. So this is finally my video on sexual abuse in ayahuasca ceremonies. And this one took a lot of research, and this is a tough topic in general. And, usually I like to make these videos, but this one just doesn't give me any pleasure whatsoever. But anyway, the whole idea for this topic came from one of my YouTube channel subscribers who asked about sexual abuse in ayahuasca ceremonies. So that's today's topic. How likely are you to be sexually abused in an ayahuasca ceremony? And some things to watch out for to help prevent something like that happening. And just one other thing before I get into this. If you're liking this channel and you're finding the information useful, apparently if you like the video and subscribe to the channel, it makes it easier for other people to find it on YouTube. So anyway, first thing, I'm truly sorry that I have to make this video. A lot of people turn to ayahuasca as a way of healing from traumas, and, this includes sexual trauma. And to be abused by someone who is giving you ayahuasca or is at an ayahuasca ceremony would be just such a double betrayal, something that would be so fundamentally wrong. But unfortunately, the problem of sexual abuse is just a fact of life everywhere and anywhere. But an ayahuasca ceremony presents some specific, some very specific problems, which I'll get into in this video. So just in general, though, sexual assault is usually committed against women, although it can include men, but it's usually women. And Rebecca Hayden from the Ayahuasca and Plant Medicine Community Toronto Facebook group was kind enough to provide her perspective, which I'll also get into a bit later. I had to do quite a bit of research on this video, and just in regards to sexual abuse in general, the abuser is typically somebody that the person knows and typically in a position of power. So this could be a priest or a teacher or a boss or a cop or a husband or doctor or a shaman or some other so-called authority in your life. And just let me give you an example from my own life. When I was a young boy growing up in a very Catholic environment, I was an altar boy. And one of the older altar boys said, if Father McKenna asked you to go into this one back room to get your robe on, don't go with him. And I didn't understand it at the time, but I do now. And, my father apparently was abused as a child by a Catholic priest. And this information came from my mother, who told me about this after my father had died. So in all likelihood, I probably could have been abused too if I had gone into that back room with Father McKenna. So I do have some idea how sexual abuse becomes a generational issue for families and loved ones. And even over generations, this type of violence is something that is passed down from generation to generation. And I know this from direct experience because I had to clear this particular generational issue from my own family of origin. And I'm actually so grateful to ayahuasca for helping me through that. So, what about an ayahuasca ceremony? And I'm doing a separate video on shamans, but one of the best pieces of advice I can give you is to not put your shaman or facilitator on a pedestal, or think that because this person has become a shaman that they're some kind of a miraculous human being. They're just people, and they deliver a service where you're vulnerable, no different than a doctor or any other healer. You're opening yourself up spiritually and emotionally in an ayahuasca ceremony, and that's where the healing takes place. But there's nothing a shaman has to do physically with you in an ayahuasca ceremony that involves, taking your clothes off or the shaman touching you in an inappropriate way. And there's certainly nothing a shaman or facilitator or any of the workers at the center has to do with you alone or take you off somewhere for a special treatment. And if you're thinking, or if someone is telling you that having sex with a shaman will speed up your healing process, that's just so much nonsense. Just like everybody else, shamans come with their own issues and family trauma and everything else that can turn someone into an abuser. So, just be aware of that. Just because someone's a shaman doesn't mean they've cleared up all the issues in their life. Shamans aren't some kind of superman or superwomen. They're just people. So, what's the likelihood of getting abused in an ayahuasca ceremony? And from my research and what I've seen, nobody can answer that question, whether it's an ayahuasca ceremony or anywhere else. That's just a fact. In Canada, for example, nobody can tell you how likely you are to be sexually assaulted just in general. The Ontario government says that 1 in 3 women will be affected by sexual violence and 1 in 6 men. And while all this sounds pretty factual, if you dig down a little bit, you'll find out that there's no reliable statistics on sexual abuse anywhere. Mostly because people who study this issue will tell you that a lot of victims, in fact, some say most victims, never come forward. So how are you going to get any real data on sexual assault in society in general, never mind in an ayahuasca ceremony? And in my research, I did a Google search, which gave me some horrible stories, from the mainstream media about people getting sexually assaulted in an ayahuasca ceremony. But, these are just anecdotal stories, and to me, this is just tabloid journalism. There's no context whatsoever. I mean, the media could report on thousands of sexual abuse cases by priests or doctors or, whoever, which is occurring every day in our society. Why are they singling out an ayahuasca ceremony? So anyway, this is how Rebecca Hayden summed it up, which I thought was just good advice, and here's what she said. In terms of abusive behavior, sexual and otherwise, we've seen this in religious institutions, governments, corporations, schools, and in any kind of situation where there is the idea of a power structure. Shamans and medicine people are human, and some do not have a focus of personal growth in their lives. As in all areas of life, I feel that the ideal people to work with are people who are empowering. It's hard to know this about a shaman or medicine person in advance. I have found myself in a situation with a shaman who crossed the lines in terms of his behavior with women. It can be very confusing and compromising situation when you are so vulnerable, and it's difficult to have the same kind of discerning sense that you would in other situations. I always recommend that women get recommendations from other women when it comes to ayahuasca retreats. But we must also trust our own feelings and learn to regard shamans or medicine people as people like you and me with flaws, wounds, talents, gifts, habits, personal histories, etc. I have also worked with some very gifted and empowering medicine people who have helped me through some difficult and transformative experiences. We have to accept some responsibility for plunging into working with this medicine in areas of the world we're still getting to know and don't always understand. And those of us who invite shamans here are also taking chances, as we do with anyone we choose to work with in that way. That said, we're also taking some huge chances in the Western world with Western medicine. I went through shocking experiences in Canadian hospitals. I hope we learn to navigate this world in a safer, more respectful, and discerning way. I think the medicines can help us to do that if we let them. And Rebecca, I'd just like to thank you for those words, and I'm so sorry you had to go through those situations, and just thank you so much for sharing. It's just a good summation of the situation with ayahuasca, and sexual abuse in general in our society. And as usual, if you feel I've misrepresented anything in this video, or I'm incorrect in dealing with this subject, or if you have some other credible sources of information which I haven't found from anywhere, but just please feel free to email me or leave a comment. I don't pretend I'm the last word on any topic, and certainly not on a sensitive topic like this. Until next time, I'm Alan Finney, and this is what ayahuasca told me to tell you.